Welcome back to Ask the Trade Pros, a show where a couple of trade guys talk about trade stuff. We're here to answer your questions about your HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and other home systems so you can keep your home running smoothly. I'm Todd.
And I'm Jordan. Boom! What are we covering today? We are covering pipe burst. So we're going to tell you what to do if a pipe bursts in your home.
Do you get out the pool raft? Do you go surfing? What do we do in a situation like that? We know that for homeowners, that could be very stressful and they don't know what to do. It puts them in a panic. So today we're going to cover a little bit about that and let you know what you can do and how to do it in order to keep the mess down to a minimum.
When a pipe bursts in your home, probably the first thing you should do is shut the water off. Do you know where your water shutoff? You should always know where your water shutoff is. But the way to minimize damage first when a pipe bursts is to stop more water from coming through it.
Yeah, so speaking of water shutoffs, some of you may or may not know where your shutoff is on your house. Is it at your house? Is it at your street? Do you know what it looks like? So typically on most homes, and this isn't always the case, you have a water shutoff somewhere on the front of your house or the side of the house where the water comes from the city or the municipality and enters your home. Typically, you'll see a riser, which is a pipe coming out of the ground, and a handle on it that you turn multiple times, which would be a gate valve, or just a ball valve, which shuts the water off to your house.
Ball valve looks like a lever.
Correct. It's just a 90-degree turn, which you turn and it shuts it off. Typically, you'll see a hose bib at that location, so I recommend if you do have a pipe burst, there's still water in the line. So if you want the water to stop quickly, what you're going to want to do is shut that valve off and open that hose bib to drain out any of the remaining water in the system.
Now, what should I do, Todd, if I can't get that valve to turn? Those old gate valves are notoriously lousy. We have really hard water here. They tend to jam up. What would be my next step if I can't get that to shut off?
That's a good question. And you could go find your meter, which is the city meter, I should say, which is typically at the street or depending on area, could be an alley or somewhere like that. This is all things that I recommend all homeowners knowing where all these emergency shutoffs are in their home to be able to do this in case of an emergency. So if your shutoff at the house isn't working, your next only choice is going to be to go shut it off at the meter. And I could tell you that typically if you're not looking in your meter, most of the time they're going to be filled with dirt and you need a special meter key to be able to shut those off.
So you're saying the first step in this emergency is to prepare before the emergency, locate the water shutoff, whether on the home or whether on the meter or both, learn how to use them, even try them to make sure that they work before you need them?
Yeah, exactly. Because like you just said, the valves they're not 100% going to open or close. You don't know. They break, they get old. You don't know if they're functional or not. So it'd be a good practice to go cycle those on and off every once in a while to make sure they are functional. Once you do get the water shut off, obviously the first thing you're going to want to do is go back into the house and assess and see how much water you have in the house. Do you have wood flooring? Do you have tile? Do you have carpet? You want to get that water cleaned up as fast as possible because if it soaks into your carpet or if you leave it standing, your baseboards, your drywall, that's going to start absorbing that water, and that's where the expensive damage comes in. Is somebody's going to have to cut out your drywall and going to have to bring in air machines to dry all that out prior to doing anything.
I always recommend that customers keep a emergency list. It's just like any kind of emergency. You have a medical emergency, you might have your prescription list that you take into the doctor. You have an auto emergency, you might have a form in your car that has the insurance and a little picture and instructions what to do. A water burst is the same thing, although most of us never think about it. It doesn't happen often enough that we're prepared. So I would always recommend you have some sort of cheat sheet, and that cheat sheet would cover where the shutoff is, how to shut the shutoff. At Dunright Services, we have a service where we tag the shutoff so you know which ones are which and what exactly they do, so you don't have to remember that. There's also a little checklist that we often can leave with customers where they'll know, okay, step 1, shut the water off at the main. Step 2, if that's not available, go to the city thing. Step 3, evaluate the situation. Step 4, you would have, whether it's your homeowner's insurance or your trusted trade pro or whatever contacts you would need to do, who you would start calling in, what order you would do it. Like Todd said, if it's drywall, if it's carpet, you want to soak it up as fast as possible so you don't ruin more, so you don't get mold, so you don't get further damage. We do this trade stuff a lot, and doing it for years, customers come to me all the time and like, oh, this is an emergency, that's an emergency. I don't see as many things as being an emergency, but water, pipe burst, those are an emergency because if you don't get to it quick, you'll cause more damage.
Yeah, exactly. So back to the pipes itself. So you're going to have more issues or less issues depending on what type of pipe, how the piping was ran. If you have polybutylene pipe, at that point, if you have a rupture in that, they discontinued using polybutylene pipe years ago because it failed. So if you do have a house that has polybutylene piping, it's really time to probably consider a repipe and repiping your home before you do have a major issue, and insurance does have to get involved. If it's an older home, it could have galvanized piping, which again is a big problem because if it has a pinhole leak, it's very difficult to just do a repair because it's all threaded. So you're having to unthread or cut the pipe and use a compression fitting, which really isn't a permanent repair. The best piping to have, in my opinion, is going to be the new, what we use today is PEX piping or copper. Doesn't matter where you have a pinhole in the copper pipe, you could just cut it and either press or solder in a new fitting or a section of pipe and keep the cost down.
Now, we've talked a little bit here about pipe bursting, but there's also pipe leaks. They're very similar. They're just not as urgent. So you'll notice a slight leak in your ceiling or your wall or something, that water leak detection. It falls under the same kind of guidelines, the same kind of steps you would take for a pipe burst. You just may see a little less urgency to it, but it's not, because if it's a slow leak, the water might have been leaking in a wall or in a ceiling or a roof for a while, and you could have mold buildup or you could have additional buildup because it takes you so long to notice that leak versus a pipe burst, which hopefully you should notice relatively quickly. But you'd want to follow the same steps that Todd said. You'd want to shut the water off. You'd want to isolate it, see if you can locate it, call your trade professional to come locate it. I know most trade professionals, we use specialized equipment. We can locate them in walls. We can locate them in floors and ceilings, wherever they're at. That way we can get you a solution for it.
So if you do ever experience a pipe leak or a pipe burst, try to remain calm. A lot of times if you panic, you take longer to find something. So just remain calm. Go find your shutoff. If you can't find your shutoff or if it's not functional, just have that emergency list like Jordan spoke about and get somebody out there as quick as possible. Anything in your house is fixable, so try not to panic, and we all pay homeowners insurance for a reason. Sometimes you have to use it. Thanks again for listening to Jordan and I ramble back and forth about random home stuff. So if you learned something today, don't forget to subscribe.
Hey, you got a question you want us to cover? Send us a message or a voicemail, and we'll be happy to make a story out of it. The stranger, the better. We love your weird questions, and we appreciate them. Check out our show notes for how to contact us.
And again, thank you to our sponsor, Done Right Services, for making this show possible.